Hi, I'm Naveen Day. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre vows to use the notwithstanding clause to ensure multiple murderers die in prison. Plus, the Alberta government announced $100 million in funding for the University of Alberta's Biological Sciences building. Fires in West Lethbridge cause $1.75 million in damage and destroy 2 homes.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Naveen Day, filling in for Jeanette Roche. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's looking at something to help the auto sector with his hefty tariffs. When Trump announced his 25% auto tariffs last month, he described them as permanent. But now he's suggesting that he might temporarily exempt the auto industry from tariffs to give car makers time to adjust their supply chains. And the Trump administration announced Friday that it was exempting imported smartphones, laptops, and other electronics from reciprocal tariffs. But then Sunday, Trump wanted to clear things up. Posting to his X account, he said, quote, "There was no tariff exemption announced on Friday." When asked by reporters on this matter, Trump had this to say.
What about any Apple products, other cell phones?
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go. No, sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it. There'll be maybe things coming up. I speak to Tim Cook. I helped Tim Cook recently, and that whole business. I don't want to hurt anybody, but the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. We're the greatest economic power in the world if we're smart. If we're not smart, we're going to hurt our country very badly.
The updated guidance, which cites a presidential memorandum issued Friday, excluded the products from Trump's 125% China tariff and his baseline 10% global tariff on some countries. They apply to goods that left a warehouse as of April the 5th. The new move may ease the blow for consumers while giving a boost to electronics giants such as Apple and Samsung. Right now, if you sell your home in Canada, the profit from that sale is exempt from the capital gains tax. But even though it's exempt, you must still report it to the Canada Revenue Agency. That was mandated by the federal government back in 2016. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation, however, is concerned that that exemption might change in the future and wants all party leaders to say publicly whether they're for it or against it. Chris Sims is the Alberta director for the CTF, and she joins me now. So, Chris, why is the CTF raising this concern now?
What we're concerned about here is that the Liberal government has put out a lot of feelers. They've sent out an awful lot of signals that they want to create a new home equity tax, okay? And what that would do is that would then tax people on the sale of their nest egg. And we know that a lot of folks are counting on the sale of their home when they get older to pay for their essentials that they're going to need when they're an older person. And so that would be a massive hit, especially to the baby boomer generation. And so we're really trying to flag this down as a concern. Also, if you're trying to make houses more affordable, taxes will not make things more affordable. Because of course, then if you nail people with a home equity tax on the sale of their home, they're likely just going to add that amount to the listing price. So there we go. Makes houses cost more.
So how does this impact the average Canadian?
Some home equity taxes would be based on a percentage as to how much you sold it for. So we did have an old home equity tax calculator, but because prices have changed so much over the years, it really does fluctuate. But in many cases, I've read a lot of these reports, we're talking anywhere around $10,000, $20,000, depending on the value of the house. Say if you bought in the 1980s or the 90s and you sold now and you bought in a place like goodness around Vancouver, like a suburb around Vancouver, or one of those areas of the 905 around Toronto, you're looking at a really hefty home equity tax bill.
Wow, yeah, I can't even imagine. So, Chris, what do you want to hear from the party leaders?
We want every party leader to say, if I am elected prime minister, I will get rid of the reporting requirement on the sale of your primary residence, your house, with the CRA. I'm going to axe that directly from the documents. No more having to tell the federal government if and when you sold your house and how much money you made on it. That is not going to be here.
That was Chris Sims, Alberta Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, joining us from Lethbridge. Liberal leader Mark Carney is pledging to help the Canadian defence industry grow. Speaking on the campaign trail in Dorval, Quebec today, Carney said a made-in-Canada approach is needed as the priorities of the United States may have shifted. Carney says the Liberal plan will include something they've dubbed Borealis.
The Bureau of Research, Engineering, and Advanced Leadership in Innovation and Science. Borealis will advance cutting-edge research in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other frontier technologies essential to safeguarding Canadian sovereignty. Because today, defense is not only about manpower, it's about brainpower. Borealis will drive innovation in terms of security technologies, enhance our capacity to deter threats, and strengthen Canada's technological superiority, all helping to ensure Canadian safety and Canada's sovereignty for decades to come.
Carney and the other federal leaders are also looking ahead to this week's televised debates in Montreal. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is promising to do something no federal government has ever done before. Speaking in Montreal, Poilievre says a Conservative government would use the notwithstanding clause in the Charter of Rights to implement some of his tough on crime agenda. Poilievre plans to reverse a Supreme Court ruling.
Now, Parliament has the legitimate constitutional authority and the moral duty to correct this injustice and restore common sense sentencing with no more discounts for multiple murderers. Every life matters, and someone who takes multiple lives should be held accountable for each one. That's why I'm announcing today a Conservative government will reintroduce and pass the law that empowered judges to impose consecutive sentences for killers convicted of multiple murders. The worst mass murderers should never be allowed back on our streets. For them, a life sentence should mean what it says, a life sentence. They should only come out in a box.
Poilievre says judges should once again have the option of handing down consecutive sentences, especially to convicted mass murderers. Meanwhile, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh warned that invoking the notwithstanding clause is becoming more commonplace, while Mark Carney says Poilievre's plan to use the notwithstanding clause as part of his tough on crime plan is, quote, a slippery slope.
And I'm concerned, and I mentioned this before, I'm concerned with the fact that it's being used more and more. Charter rights, human rights should not be things that we are willing to ignore or put to the side. And I'm worried that it's becoming more and more commonplace that the notwithstanding clause is being used.
The politicizing certain issues with respect to fundamental rights is a slippery slope. Being tough on crime and being tough starts with being smart on crime. And it includes being tough on guns and gun violence.
And speaking of crime, violent crime in Canada is on the rise, and gun laws seem to target legal gun owners over criminals. Rick Blakely is the president of the Lethbridge Fish and Game Association and the range operator of Lethbridge's sports shooting facility. He gives us some thoughts on how gun laws are impacting law-abiding citizens.
The stats say that licensed gun owners are less than 1%, and that crime has increased dramatically. And I forget the stat. I mean, it's a fairly large. If you look at the graph, it's going up quite considerably because of the lack of control at the border. Guns are coming across the border. They're coming in from Europe. The gangs are growing in size and power. Citizens are being vilified, and criminals and gangs are being encouraged. If you ask me, there seems to be no punishment for criminal activity, especially violent criminal activity. It's counterintuitive. It really is. It doesn't make sense.
Catch my full interview with Rick Blakely, president of the Lethbridge Fish and Game Association, coming up later in our program. Back to the campaign trail now. Just one day earlier in Ottawa, Pierre Poilievre promised to tighten financial rules for elected officials and is using that promise to take aim at the Liberals.
A new Conservative government will bring change by introducing the Accountability Act 2.0, designed to remove the loopholes that Mr. Carney and the Liberals are using to avoid accountability for themselves and for their party. We will eliminate the lobbying loophole and require anyone who's acting as an advisor to government officials to declare themselves and register as a lobbyist whenever they are advising on matters that touch upon their financial interests or that of their company.
You know, it's not quite April 28th yet, but voting for the federal election has officially begun, at least for some post-secondary institutions across Canada. Now, here at the University of Lethbridge, advanced campus polling opened on Sunday, giving the chance for students, staff, and all the other eligible voters for the convenience to vote for the candidate in their home riding within campus. The U of L is the only post-secondary institution outside of Calgary and Edmonton in Alberta that is hosting what's dubbed as an external service point.
So we started yesterday and we had actually a lot more than we had expected. We had about 55 people, 60 people, and then we've already had quite a few just this morning and are expecting a lot more for the next couple of days, especially since it's exam season now. And so a lot of kids are coming into the university and writing exams. So I think it's nice that they can, they have to be here to write an exam and they can just pop in and partake in the electoral process.
It's really cool to see the wave of kids and of, I guess, now adults really caring about their futures, right? Really looking forward to how they can participate in society and make their lives better in the future and the lives, of course, of their family and of their children, right? And seeing kids and seeing young adults taking charge and being a part of that is so important. And so it's pretty cool to be able to support them in this way by having a polling station so close. That it just makes it so easy for them to come in and vote, right?
Voting at the U of L will continue until the 16th, each day from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Thanks to funding in Budget 2025, the University of Alberta is getting an injection of $100 million over the next 3 years. The university plans to use the funds to upgrade the 56-year-old Biological Sciences building into a STEM and Life Sciences Research and Education Lab. Now, STEM, of course, stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. And Advanced Education Minister Rajan Sawhney says along with the upgrades, the old Biological Sciences building will be given a new name.
This infusion of funding will include major retrofitting and updating with complex utilities, controlled environments, and advanced safety features. The building will also get a new name, one that's indicative of the transformational work that will take place within these walls. When completed, the Life Sciences Innovation and Future Technologies, or LIFT, Center will become a dynamic and shared laboratory complex where researchers, students, and industry partners can work together to solve the most urgent problems of our time.
The project will be built in 5 phases and enable the U of A to double the number of laboratory seats from 1,600 to 3,200. The province has unveiled a new program that will help Albertans buy from local producers. The Buy Local program is being added to the Made in Alberta program that was launched in 2023. That program has seen roughly 800 products labeled as being made here. Agricultural Minister R.J. Sigurdsson says with U.S. tariffs on everyone's mind and more shoppers looking for local products, this program will help them find them.
The awareness is a big part of this, and making sure that our farmers, ranchers, our processors here in the province are aware of the program and the benefit of that program. What we're seeing through this consumer shift is a growing demand for locally sourced products. So the buy local is two-tiered. Of course, we're promoting the Made in Alberta labeling program, but also supporting a buy local campaign and working with our grocery stores to be able to help them easily identify for consumers those products that are made in Canada and made in Alberta.
You can find more information at alberta.ca/buylocal. BC's Civil Liberties Association is intervening in a Supreme Court of Canada case that's set to begin tomorrow. The case is examining the constitutionality of Newfoundland and Labrador's COVID-19 pandemic travel restrictions. It started in 2022 when a Nova Scotia resident couldn't attend her mother's funeral in Newfoundland because she was denied an exemption to a public health order banning all non-residents from entering the province. The BC Association says it will argue that the Charter protects permanent residents' right to move between and within provinces. Over the weekend, Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services responded to 2 neighboring residential fires in northwest Lethbridge on Saturday afternoon. 20 firefighters from 5 stations arrived to find 2 homes on the 1200 block of Pacific Circle West fully engulfed in flames. Crews battled to prevent the fires from reaching other neighboring homes through intense winds. No injuries have been reported. However, the damage is estimated at $1.75 million. Wow, look at that damage. The area is only open to local traffic at this time to give investigators and crews the space to work safely. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. From this Monday through Saturday, the National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week is being celebrated. With hundreds of calls per day announcing emergencies through 911, a group of highly trained emergency communications officers performs this important task. The skill and composure of the Public Safety Communications Center, or PSCC, while gathering information to request intervention from the appropriate agency, allows many families to be heard and assisted promptly. Joel McDonald, Deputy Chief at the Public Safety Communications Center, talks about the work PSCC offers to different communities.
We serve 23 different fire agencies, as well as the Lethbridge Police Service. And a total population of approximately 160,000 people use our services through our contracted 911 delivery. We process about 160,000 events a year, serving all those people in those different communities and regions. It's a vital link for both 911 and the non-emergency complaint lines as well. So we do answer the police non-emergency complaint lines as well as 911. So anytime the citizens need help for police, fire, and EMS, we're here to support them. And a big challenge too is the abandoned 911 calls, pocket dials. Technology has really changed the way our people have to adapt. It's not just call taking anymore, it's using technology to figure out where people are. So we're constantly adapting, constantly learning. So the City of Lethbridge and the fire department specifically has done some really amazing work with bringing on lots of dedicated mental health support. So we have a health and wellness coordinator, we have psychological services available. We start working on building some of that mental health and resiliency for our staff, and then providing that ongoing support throughout their entire career.
We're also actually celebrating reaccreditation. So the PSCC has been reaccredited as the 63rd fire agency across the world for accreditation. Essentially just means that it's a center of excellence through the International Fire Academy of Dispatch. And so it's a huge accomplishment for the PSCC. It ties into our quality assurance daily, and so all the calls that our PSCC dispatchers process, we provide quality assurance throughout the month.
The officials say the main calls PSCC receives are vehicle collisions, open fires, and issues requiring police involvement. Woods Home's Mental Health Centres has received a $25,000 grant to support those transitioning from homelessness or a shelter to their first independent living situation. Haley Thompson, Woods Home's Youth and Family Counsellor, said the Government of Canada's Reaching Home program is delivered through the City of Lethbridge. Thompson explains how many people will benefit and how the funds will be used.
These startup packages include things like basic furniture, a bed frame, basic kitchen supplies such as pots and pans, cleaning supplies, laundry supplies, and then a grocery gift card to help kids get started. Thanks to community partners such as London Drugs, we were actually able to stretch that to 30 startup packages, which was really amazing. Are identified as being at risk of homelessness or homeless. Once they're identified and in our program, they would be eligible to receive this. And we help youth secure stable and safe, independent housing. And then that also allows them the ability to take time to work on their mental health, their physical health, work on their goals such as, completing their education or gaining employment and things that are meaningful to them.
Thompson says over 60% of the funds were spent at local businesses, reinforcing commitment to supporting the local economy. Well, the promise of some warm summer-like days is on the radar for this week. We'll be right back with a full look at the weather forecast. A bit of rain is on tap for us this week, but otherwise mainly sunny. Tonight, a few clouds, winds southwest at 20 kilometers per hour, gusting to 40, and a low of +2.
The 7-day forecast to start off this week has us with a high of 15 for Monday, with wind reaching up to 20 kilometers an hour and could even get up to 40 kilometers an hour. Tuesday's looking to have a high of 19 with sunny skies. Wednesday's going to have a high of 8 with cloudy skies, and Thursday is going to have a high of 9 with partly cloudy skies. Friday is going to have a high of 13 with sunny skies, and both Saturday and Sunday are going to have partly cloudy skies, with Saturday getting a high of 17 and Sunday a high of 11. On to today's almanac, the average high for this time of year is 13, with the low being -1. The record high was set back in 1913 with a high of 27, and the record low was set back in 1935 with a low of -16. The sun rose at 6:41 a.m. today and will set at 8:23 p.m. Moving on to the national forecast, Vancouver and Victoria are going to have sunny skies, with Victoria getting a high of 16 and Vancouver a nice 12. Edmonton and Calgary are going to share partly cloudy skies, with Edmonton getting a high of 13 and Calgary a high of 17. On to the rest of the prairies, Saskatoon and Regina share partly cloudy skies, with Saskatoon having a high of 17 and Regina a 16. And Winnipeg's going to be getting a high of 8 with sunny skies. Central Canada is looking to get a good amount of rain, with Toronto getting a high of 7, Ottawa getting a high of 10, and Montreal a high of 12. On to the East Coast, Fredericton is going to get a high of 11 with a chance of showers. Halifax and Charlottetown are going to have partly cloudy skies, with Halifax getting a high of 14 and Charlottetown a high of 8. And finishing off the national forecast with St. John's, we have a high of 6 with a chance of showers.
Stats Canada reports wholesale trade rose 0.3% in February. That figure excludes petroleum products, other hydrocarbons, and excluding oil seed and grain. The overall increase in sales to $85.7 billion comes just as 2 of the 7 subsectors posted gains. Sales in machinery, equipment, and supplies saw gains of 7.1% for the month, while the food, beverage, and tobacco subsector also grew marginally. The auto vehicle and parts subsectors posted the largest decrease, falling 3.1% for the month. British Columbia's budding liquefied natural gas industry may have some stiff competition from a mega project in Alaska. The cost and scale have held Alaskan LNG efforts back for decades, but there's been renewed interest since U.S. President Donald Trump took office. The project has an estimated price tag of $44 billion U.S. Analysts still have doubts, but point out Alaska's odds of success are higher with Donald Trump in the White House and Republicans controlling the U.S. Congress. A rare Golconda vivid blue diamond weighing in at over 23 carats is set to be auctioned at Christie's in May. According to the auction house's international head of jewelry, Rahul Kadakia, the gem was once owned by the Maharaja of Indore.
Look, what's unique is that the stone has not changed in over 100 years. The weight has remained the same, 23.24 carats. And it's not changed shape, it's not changed weight, it's not changed size. And so that already is quite special. The fact that it belonged to such an important and noble provenance makes it that much more special for the new owner to own a part of history. Because it comes from the Golconda mines, which is a mine in south central India, which produced some of the most famous diamonds in the world, including the Hope Diamond, which is at the Smithsonian, including the Kohinoor, which is in the Queen Mother's crown, and this diamond now that we have for sale at Christie's. I think it's going to set a brand new record for a blue diamond or any colored diamond at auction because it's irreplaceable. You know, there are blue diamonds in the market and they're all rare, but to have a blue diamond with this noble provenance, with a Golconda origin, it's not going to happen again.
The sale is expected to set a record at $35 to $50 million. That's a gorgeous rock. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 278 points on the day to finish at 23,866. The Dow was up 312 points to 40,524. The S&P 500 was up 42 to 5,405, and the Nasdaq was up 107 points to 16,831. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 6 cents to 61.56 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 19 cents to 3.33 US. Gold was down 25.91 to 32.1064 US an ounce. Silver was up 7 cents to 32.34 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.84 per bushel. Barley is at $6.79. Canola is at $15.05, and corn is at $8.20 per bushel. Live cattle are up 147 to 203.95. Feeder cattle were up 287 to 288.05, and lean hogs were up 5 cents to 85.47. And the Canadian dollar was up over the past 24 hours and currently sits at 72.10 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says he'll ensure multiple murderers die in jail by becoming the first Canadian Prime Minister to override charter rights by invoking the notwithstanding clause. He is seeking to allow judges to impose consecutive life sentences for murderers. In 2022, the Supreme Court ruled that consecutive parole ineligibility periods of 25 years in cases involving multiple first-degree murders was unconstitutional. The proposal means that if someone was convicted of 6 murders, they would not be eligible for parole for 150 years. Canadian steelmaker Algoma says Donald Trump's tariffs are hitting the wrong target. The company's CEO, Michael Garcia, said the U.S. should stop treating Canada as a trade threat and instead focus on nations engaged in dumping cheap steel in North America, Canada included. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari gives us her thoughts after the break. And when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews. U.S. President Donald Trump announced Sunday that nobody was getting off the hook for unfair trade balances and tariff barriers, which other countries have used against the United States. To talk more about this is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari. Lisa, the Trump administration announced Friday that it was exempting imported smartphones, laptops, and other electronics from reciprocal tariffs. But then on Sunday, Trump wanted to clear a few things up. What did he say?
You know, I saw a meme that perfectly captured this back and forth. It was tax on, tax off. And funny, obviously, kind of a reference to the Karate Kid and the taxes and the announcements and the markets responding to this back and forth. Why would Donald Trump say one thing and then take a pause and then say another thing and then take it back? In this case, as you stated, he said that those very important sectors are off the hook for tariffs, but then took it back and said, you know what, no one's off the hook for tariffs. And he doubled down on China really being the target here in terms of paying their fair share and evening the playing field and really having nothing being exempt. Look, as the days and weeks go on, we will be able to iron this out a bit more. If I were, Donald Trump's advisors, I would perhaps try maybe they would succeed and maybe not, to advise him to really not come out with any statements until they have it all ironed out, only because the markets are responding in such a dramatic way. And maybe that's by design to show the power that the United States has and show the power that the tariffs have. And that is really what he's trying to do, to say, look, this is the United States. If you want to play with us, you got to play fair. And that's really the main goal here. But whether or not this will pan out the way that he envisions it, the way that he has designed it, we shall see.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent weighed in on America's tariff negotiations with other countries. Now, when he appeared on Kudlow last week, he says up to 70 nations want to negotiate over Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, so again, being the goal that we bring nations to the United States to have a discussion so that we can, again, level the playing field, make things fair. And we, the message from the Trump White House isn't that we don't want to play, it's that we want you to play with us and play fairly. So that is a positive sign in the eyes of the Trump White House, that look, here we are, we got countries to line up and want to have a discussion with us, and why not? I mean, from the point of view of global politics, and I'm not just talking about an advantage for the United States. If we want everyone to prosper, well, then why not do a reset where things fall in line, and the United States will have, a more robust and more confident, trading scenarios and paradigms where these countries will come and have a discussion and therefore walk away with, okay, here's the deal. So we're hoping that that's what happens. We hope that everyone falls in line and then they come to agreements and concessions that will benefit everyone globally, and that hopefully is the goal.
Canadian steelmaker Algoma says Trump's tariffs are hitting the wrong target. The company's CEO, Michael Garcia, said the U.S. should stop treating Canada as a trade threat and instead focus on nations engaged in dumping cheap steel in North America, which includes Canada. What are your thoughts?
Right. Right. I mean, it's an interesting, argument to be made. Look, the steel industry in Canada is saying we're the ones who are providing the steel. We're the ones who are suffering also from China dumping cheap steel here. So they're affecting our competition. We are trying to just do the right work, and we're the ones now being targeted by tariffs. So it's a fair argument to be made. The argument that obviously the White House is making, that Trump is making, is that no, this is everyone across the board will be playing fairly, including China. So if you're saying that China is the main culprit, well, we're after them too. We're trying to get them to play fair too. Again, it will take time before any of the dust settles. I am listening to both of these arguments on both sides daily. And look, everyone makes a decent argument here, but if the goal across the board is to have a more robust, a better, a stronger, more prosperous global economy, let's hope that we get there. And this does not just disrupt, but actually reorganizes and makes things fair the way that Trump has always envisioned. This is something that he has been campaigning on and talking about even before he had any aspirations of becoming the US president. This is what he always talked about, that the United States gets taken advantage of, that we pay too much money, that the ratio is just not fair, whether it's talking about the UN or NATO or paying our fair share globally in terms of tariffs we're being taken advantage of. So again, that's his goal. That's what where the United States is coming from. Now, we hope that we can, play nicely with our northern and southern neighbors, because that's just a pack that will always stay together. And that we hope that in the aftermath, everyone will benefit from all of this.
Switching gears now, where are we at with the war in Gaza? Because I hear Hamas says they are prepared for a serious hostage release. What are the details?
Yeah, we don't know. We are hoping. Let's say, look, over the weekend they released a video of the United States citizen who's being kept hostage. We are a year and a half into this war. The fact that there are still hostages is just crazy. It's crazy. So I don't know if there's any good news to ever be had in this war, because to talk about a terror organization that has a U.S. citizen hostage for a year and a half in the most horrific conditions, in tunnels, and being starved and being raped and being beaten, and they've lost limbs and they've lost their lives. We have dead hostages that they haven't been, the families have not retrieved the bodies to have a proper burial. There's so much in this war, but it continues. Now, the latest proposal is to release 9 or 10 hostages. There remains 59 hostages that are thought to be alive, perhaps. If we can hope at least half of them are alive. That's always been the ratio and always been the statistic given in this war. But again, the fact that we're going back to the negotiating table, the fact that, Donald Trump has been in office for about 3 months now, trying to make this happen with his envoy, Steve Witkoff, who's being spread pretty thin because he's also handling the Iran nuclear deal portfolio. He's handling the Ukraine-Russia ceasefire, and now he's obviously handling the hostage talks and ceasefire talks as well. So we're hoping to see some sort of about face after 18 months of this war, but let's see what happens in this latest round.
Well, hopefully. And I also hear more and more Gazans are speaking out against Hamas, recognizing the organization as the instigators of the conflict. Tell me more.
Yeah, the Gazans here and there over the last, decade have tried to stand up here and there. It's not a huge movement. We've always said, where are the Gazan voices? Where are the Palestinians who say, you know what, I saw one of the hostages down the street, I'm going to blow the whistle here. But instead, we're hearing stories about Palestinian families harboring a lot of the hostages, taking them into their homes and playing along. So this actually is a story of hope, of optimism, where you can say, okay, there are obviously the main issue with the Palestinian people is leadership, the fact that they're being led by a terror organization. So yes, when they come out onto the streets, but what will happen next? Maybe the reason that they're not speaking up, or more of them are not speaking up, is because of the very, very, very harsh consequences when you're dealing with a terror organization. So yes, while we do have those Palestinians who come to the hostage releases and are cheering for Hamas and wearing Hamas gear and are actually, pledging allegiance to Hamas, a terror organization, we also have those who are now on the streets and saying, we want to be free from terror. We want to be free from the reins of Hamas, and we want actual leadership to take us forward. So this is a very promising little glimmer of light in all of this, but you just don't have A, the masses, and B, you don't have the support. They will, quash these protests in whatever way possible. And that means taking lives, arresting, beating, and really sending these protesters home.
And we just had Palm Sunday yesterday, and the celebrations in the Ukrainian city of Sumy became an absolute tragedy as Russian missiles struck and killed over 30 civilians. Now, Russian and Ukrainian diplomats are blaming each other for violating a tentative ceasefire. What can you tell us about this?
It was just horrific. This story really made its rounds yesterday, and I know that there has been bloodshed for so long in Ukraine with the Russian attacks coming in almost daily. But this, in particular, on Palm Sunday, in a community where they were churchgoers, and to have such a bloodbath created in the middle of trying to come up with a ceasefire and trying to end this war. I mean, Russia is speaking louder with its actions than with its words. I mean, where is Putin on all of this? It's Marco Rubio just about a week ago called Putin out and said, we're not going to have any more talks about having talks. If you are serious about a ceasefire, then we need to see those the actions. And look, if this is the action that he's showing, well, it doesn't really bode well for the future of ceasefires and any hopes of ending this war anytime soon. So I do think that there will be consequences for this. I do think that the United States will, if they do want to be at the helm of the ceasefires here and ending this war, well, they will have to actually up the ante to get Russia to take this more seriously and to really understand that there have to be consequences to these types of actions. The Ukrainians obviously now feeling very worried and apprehensive about not having as much U.S. support, about not having global support in continuing this war. And and that's an argument also. To what end? To what end do we continue this war? So we shall see what the narrative will be coming from the White House this week.
Now, back on U.S. soil, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's home was attacked and set ablaze with Molotov cocktails early Sunday morning. The man who allegedly did this turned himself into state police. What more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, this horrific attack on his residence. Thank God nobody was hurt. But if you look at the damage, it was meant to hurt, meant to create damage and meant to terrorize. The suspect, who has been taken into custody on charges of attempted murder, and arson, attempted and on terrorism. I mean, there's so many different charges that are being brought against him, and thankfully that he isn't in custody. But he was intending to hurt the governor. He actually went in with a hammer, saying, if I do come face face to face with him, I want to beat him with a hammer. So, you know, Josh Shapiro obviously is a very vocal Democrat, but also a very vocal Jew. He just wrapped up the first night of Passover, and this was what authorities believe a very targeted, symbolic hate crime that was meant to target him on that first night of Passover. But horrific story, and really speaks to the very serious anti-Semitism problem that we have growing in the United States, not just in the universities, but as we see from this story, it's happening everywhere.
Very sad. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Naveen.
It seems in every federal election, the issue of gun control comes up. Our nation continues to see high levels of violent crime, which many believe is fueled by the number of guns in Canada. But are the rights of registered gun owners, hunters, and sport shooters being violated with government restrictions? And will gun restrictions actually reduce violent crime? Or is it just virtue signaling? Joining us to chat about this is Rick Blakely. He is the president of the Lethbridge Fish and Game Association and Sport Shooting Facility. Rick, great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
First of all, can you just tell us a little bit about the Lethbridge Shooting Sport Facility? Where is it located and what kind of sport shooting takes place there?
Well, it's located in Penequin Park, down in the coulees. The use of the range. Let's start with we have Blood Tribe Police, Lethbridge City Police. We have a whole bunch of police departments that use us, K Division, RCMP. So that's one use that's quite prevalent during the day. We put in a $1 million carbine range for them. So that's a fairly active and revenue generating piece of our range. The other pieces are sports shooting. There's a number of different sports that people participate in. They're really passionate about it. And so we have, about $150,000 worth of machines that throw shotgun targets all over the place so people can try and hit them. They aren't big enough for me. Then we have long range, 300-yard range for hunters to make sure that they are ethical hunters. That's really important because you don't want to. Hunting is actually the harvesting of animals to bring populations in line, and you don't want to injure an animal. Ethical hunters want to make sure that the animal is euthanized fairly quickly. Then we have, we're just putting in about $85,000 worth of archery, 3D targets, and equipment down there to improve our archery range. That's another area where hunters come down and hone their skills. And competitive shooters. We have provincial 3D archery target winners. We have all sorts of people down there. We have a handgun fellow who has competed in the Pan American Games. We now have a person who is working on he's training for the World Championship 3-gun competition. I believe that's happening in Czech Republic. So the range is really active with a lot of people who are passionate about making some little thing go as far as they can and hit a place in the distance. So that's basically in a nuts. We have a bunch of programs for children. We have a classroom, and the classroom has an air gun range in it, and so youth go in there and learn from our fellow who is the ISSS champion. Anyway, I could spend half an hour telling you what we do down there.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of stuff going on at the range there. Sounds like there's a lot to experience there. So, but moving forward now, can you give viewers an update on where we're currently at with Canada's gun laws that have been changed since 2020 with Bill C-71 and Bill C-21 as to handguns and so-called assault weapons?
Well, that's an interesting topic. The government has called these things assault rifles, but really the rifles that they're talking about, in particular that popular one, the AR-15, is actually Armalite Rifle 15. It was designed for people who did three-gun competitions, and so it's light and it's versatile. The firearms used in the past for assault rifles were had a wood stock, and you had to hold them kind of funny. But in the Vietnam War, they were walking through the jungle and they got jumped, so they had to be able to acquire a target really quickly. So those guns have what we call a tactical stock, which means that they're just ergonometrically better than the previous wood stocks. The government decided that anything that looks like that is an assault rifle. As a matter of fact, they banned the 22 caliber, which is a really small caliber used for blinking. There's two different versions of it: a word stock and what they call a tactical stock. The actions are the same, yet the tactical stock gun is prohibited and the wood stock is not. It really doesn't make sense. It's mostly political gesturing, or it's I guess you could call it gaslighting. It's trying to satisfy the citizens that they're doing something, but really what they're doing is vilifying people who are actually quite patriotic citizens who are licensed, who have taken training, who the RCMP have done background checks. As a matter of fact, the statistics on people who are licensed doing anything violent is less than a percentage. If any one of our licensed firearm owners is violent, even in a hockey game, playing hockey, they can lose their ability to shoot. Yet the government seems to want to allow, not allow, but with the current justice system and with the border controls, they allow the criminals to basically run free with firearms, even machine guns, which are definitely assault rifles, assault pistols. They're designed exactly for what they're saying that we have.
Now, the federal government has put a buyback mandate in place and is trying to force gun owners to surrender their banned weapons to the government, which promises to buy them back at fair market value. Has that actually started yet? And if so, how many guns have they bought back so far, and at what cost?
Well, you got to remember, there's 2.2 million licensed firearm owners in Canada. That's a fairly large political group, and if you include the people they influence. The government put the legislation through in an order in council originally, it isn't debated, it's just the Governor General puts it in. And so they never owned them. They can't buy something back that they never owned. It's just a political gesture to say they're working on crime, yet crime has increased dramatically since they took power.
And what kind of impact is this having on gun owners and also on gun store business owners?
Well, let's start with the range. They seem to be really focused on eliminating all firearms from civilian use, and that's been a stated goal by many, including the current person who's running for the Liberal Party. I'm beyond words on that topic. Yeah.
Now, we should probably ask, what exactly is an assault weapon? You mentioned the AR-15, AR not standing for assault rifle, but Armalite. I know one of the terms the government used previously was firearms designed for the battlefield. That sounds scary, but is that anywhere close to an accurate description?
Well, I've talked to many soldiers, and none of them would go into battle with any of these firearms that they've banned. They're semi-automatics. A soldier needs a firearm that'll shoot rapidly, like a machine gun or 3-shot bursts. These things are not, well, some of them are bolt-action rifles, so they are not, definitely not military grade. The joke is that they're going to give them to the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians wouldn't take them into battle if they wanted. So it's kind of ridiculous. And back to your other question, if they ban all firearms, that means our range will close. We won't have a range. We won't have a place. Well, I guess it'll still be there, but we have a number of people who are passionate. The businesses have lost billions already. We're closing sporting goods stores, like what I understand, quite dramatically, including those in Lethbridge, and that's an economic hit to us.
And I believe that the groups pushing for gun control are doing so out of honesty-held beliefs that this will increase public safety. But what do the stats actually tell us?
The stats say that licensed gun owners are less than 1%, and that crime has increased dramatically. And I forget the stat. I mean, it's a fairly large. If you look at the graph, it's going up quite considerably because of the lack of control at the border. Guns are coming across the border. They're coming in from Europe. The gangs are growing in size and power. I heard about a fellow who was caught with drugs and guns and cash, and the judge, I don't know if this is true, but the judge gave him his cash back, sent him on his way, and a policeman caught him buying a new gun on the streets of on the steps of the court. So is that effective? I would say not.
So, and you're talking about gang crime in our cities, and so will this legislation actually fix anything? Are criminals law-abiding citizens in one area but not? And where are criminals getting their weapons from?
Well, citizens are being vilified, and criminals and gangs are being encouraged. If you ask me, there seems to be no punishment for criminal activity, especially violent criminal activity. It's counterintuitive. It really is. It doesn't make sense. So that's why I kind of like Poilievre's phrase, common sense legislation.
So now we're coming up to a federal election. So are there any federal parties that would repeal Bill C-71 or make changes to protect the rights of gun owners?
Oh, definitely. The conservatives under Poilievre have said, this is ridiculous. It isn't a solution. We should be spending the millions, it could be billions, that would be spent on a buyback program on mental health, on police, on jail, on actually working with the youth to dissuade young people from going into gangs.
So let's switch gears for a bit here and talk about the many individuals and even families with kids who come out to the Lethbridge sports shooting range. Is this a safe sport?
Thank you for asking. We did a presentation to council about, I think it's 5 or 6 levels of safety. Our first level is everybody who uses the range, or everybody who uses the range should be a range officer, and that's a 4-hour training that we do, and it's mostly about attitude and being safe. And we're one of the only ranges in the middle of the city, so we have to be extra safe, and that's why we put in extra measures to ensure the safety of the range, including things that would catch errant bullets, bullet traps, all sorts of stuff. So there's about 6 levels of safety, up to and including the big coolie wall at the back of the range. The range officers are in charge of safety, and they guarantee that people will be safe. As a matter of fact, kind of interesting. A lot of them are coaches, and they do training, and they take. Well, we've got youth groups that come in, and one of the things that we've found is, especially with single parent mothers and people who don't have a lot of money, our sport is pretty cheap because we provide the firearms and the ammunition for the children. And we're finding that they're getting out of the basement and the video games with blood and gore and coming and actually feeling what it feels like to be very responsible, understanding what rules are and why they're rules, and you know, they become much better citizens because they understand what it's like to be responsible for something that could be very dangerous if in the wrong hands. I mean, you used the term weapon earlier in the discussion. A weapon is something that is used by the military. It's used to kill people. A firearm, we use the term firearm because that's a term used to put a little piece of lead downrange and hit a target, hit something that is fairly inert.
So you talked about it being an affordable sport to get into. So so for parents that are maybe want to get their child involved, but they're a little strapped on cash, what are we talking about for costs to get involved?
Nothing.
Wow.
That's what we do for the community. We when we took out a grant from the city, we promised to do $30,000 worth of community service. This last year, we did it was about $120,000 worth of work with youth, with the community, and that's volunteer hours and ammunition and targets and all that sort of stuff. So that's what we do. We've got over 2,000 members, and we've got revenue from all of the police agencies using the range. For that, we can afford to do a lot of stuff for people. As a matter of fact, lately we've had children bringing their parents down to the range because they want to get out of the basement, and they want to get out in the outdoors, and they want to be with other people.
And it's a good time of the year to do it as we head into the warmer months. Rick Blakely is the president of the Lethbridge Fish and Game Association and Sport Shooting Facility. Rick, thank you so much for your time today.
You are so welcome, and thank you for asking these very good questions. You have a good day.
You're welcome. I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.